On this whiteboard episode, we're talking about the importance of lead leg blocks. So we'll start off with just exactly what I mean by that. And I'll describe it and I'll draw it. If you're on the podcast, sorry, check out the YouTube video. It'll be a lot easier to see on there. And then we will also have some Quick Tip Tuesdays and some other videos coming out where we're actually demonstrating it so everyone is on the same page and you can get a better visual demonstration of me and some other guys doing it. So what I mean by lead leg block is the front leg of a pitcher when it hits the ground. We want the front knee to either stay the same or extend as you go from foot plant, so when your front foot hits the ground, to when we actually release the ball. So when you land, I'm not a very good artist, just pretend with me. We got the middle of the body here, and we land right there, and we have, we're landing in some position like this. This is being the lead knee right there. So if we're lead leg blocking properly, we land there, and then we go into foot plant, and we're here, and we have less of an angle there. All right, so a little bit less there. We're extending the knee as we go. If we do it wrong, we go from this position, and then the wrong way would be here, and then we go there, and it's actually bending more with the knee. So again, not the best artist in the world, but you can just understand the angle there is more acute than when we landed here, and definitely more than the good example. So this is what we don't want right there. Why do we want this? Well, it helps sequence the body better, and it acts kind of as like an emergency brake. So our front leg hits, and as our hips start rotating around and through, that leg is going to extend because of the rotation. Little spoiler alert for number 2 there. So as our hips rotate through, the knee extends out, and it allows us to create more of like a hip-shoulder separation and get more whip as our upper body comes through the ball, as opposed to landing and our body just kind of collapsing as we go and staying more linear and not getting that rotational aspect. So that's the main nuts and bolts behind lead leg blocking. Again, more to come on that in some videos that will help explain and help you visualize that a lot better. So this is something that's been looked at and studied by a lot of people. Driveline has done a ton of research on this and kind of compiled some data points based off of their thousands, maybe tens of thousands of biomechanical and motion capture evaluations they've done now. And from what they have put together, the stats correlate that a better lead leg block, and specifically that the lead knee angle at foot plant is more bent than at ball release. So again, it's extending as we go. So we land and the knee extends. Guys that do that better have increased velocity. So that's a statistical fact. It's not something that really can be argued. Guys that have a better lead leg block tend to throw harder. Are there outliers? Absolutely. There's always outliers. But when we're looking at a vast majority of people and saying that guys whose front knee continue to flex or bend after their foot hits the ground and the knee kind of bends and goes towards home plate, those guys again tend to throw harder tend to throw softer statistically speaking. So it's not something that we can really argue with and say, well, I don't like that or I don't believe that. It's a statistical fact. So that's something that if we can agree biomechanically on and understand that that's a fact, that I'm going to try to help my athletes accomplish. There are very few things in throwing that are like that. You see guys that have really short arm actions that throw 97. You see guys that have like these big long arm actions throw 97. No right or wrong there. This is something that is a little bit more black and white as far as like throwing biomechanics go. So it's also kind of is an indicator of everything else working properly. If you're sequencing properly, your hip and shoulder separation is happening at the right time. We have more of a delayed rotation with the upper body as we come through, then that should be better. And if you're doing some of those other things wrong, then it should be worse. So it's kind of an indicator of what's going on before your front leg hits the ground. It's not something where you hit the ground and then your knee just extends in the sagittal plane, you're going forwards and backwards. It's because of the rotation. So it's a good indicator of what happens. Basically, I already talked about number 2, but just to hit it again, rotation is key. The rotation of the hips is what causes that knee to lock out. Again, going back down to here, if the upper body is not rotating properly, then the knee will keep drifting forward, and that's where you end up with more of that bent leg. As you can see there, draw it again here. So if we hit and the knee and we continue towards home plate, then we will end up in a much more bent position here, and that is knee flexion. So we become more flexed because we're moving forwards and backwards, in this case just forwards. If we rotate, then that'll actually move around, again, drawing a 2D, but just pretend with me. The hips are going to rotate that way, and that's when you end up with the more locked out version or the more extended version of me there. Again, apologies for the lack of artistic skills. So we want to make sure that we're going to continue to rotate as we do that, and it's not something where we're just landing and trying to lock out the knee, but something that we're using the hip rotation to accomplish. The last thing about this is something that you do need both a certain amount of mobility for and a certain amount of strength. So a big thing that plays into this is hip internal rotation. If you can't internally rotate into that front leg, so in my case, I'm right-handed. If my left hip is lacking hip internal rotation, then I'm not going to have a hard time when my foot hits to rotate my pelvis around my femur in that situation. So again, that internal rotation is close chain. So I land, my femur is now stable and stuck in that position. And we want it stuck in that position. So I have to rotate my hips around my femur. My femur's not going to move anymore. And so we are rotating the hips, in this case, from right to left. And we want that internal rotation needs to be there for us to be able to do that. If we are blocked in hip internal rotation, then it's going to be like rotating into this wall in some instances, where you're going to kind of hit, and either the momentum's going to take you forward, or you're going to bounce back towards the third base side, again, as a right-handed pitcher. So that's something that, again, we'll show in the videos later on and be a better example there. So we do need to make sure that lead hip internal rotation is in a good spot, and we also need to make sure that it requires a good bit of strength, both or specifically speaking with eccentric hamstring strength. As we go into, we're actually going to end up being in hip flexion, but we're going to be hinging on that front leg and rotating through. We need a strong hamstring, for instance. The ankle and foot need to be able to lock in and stay solid on the ground there as well, to be able to not just land in this position and do this, but to finish. It's a very athletic move. It's a very fast move. So as you land, you're landing with something like 2.5 times your body weight and force. So just being able to absorb that and rotate through that position, you have to have the adequate strength and the adequate mobility. So make sure that it's not something that you're trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole. You need to spend time in the weight room or in other training settings, training this movement and getting strong in those positions, and not just go out and throw and really try to hammer the lead leg, which will probably cause injury before it actually helps you. So that's the importance of the lead leg block. Again, main thing being that it is one of the few things in this world where, biomechanically speaking, it does directly correlate to guys that throw harder as far as being cleaner in that movement. And as always, if you have more specific questions, please email us or leave a comment, and we will be happy to get back to you.